Hello and welcome everybody to Less House More Moolah YouTube exclusive, making up for my screw up of not recording 2 podcasts with the video on. So thank you so much, Eric and Mick, for coming back to talk about a separate topic. I'm super excited. I know that lots of us in tiny living are trying to maybe start our own business, or we're thinking about going tiny, and that involves some sort of career pivot. And so I thought it would be helpful for you all to hear from 3 of us that are kind of creating really niche businesses as we're, kind of exploring our future in our tiny living world. So thank you both for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks. Excited.
So I have a couple of ideas that I wanted to talk about. This is the first time I've done like a 3-person panel. So I'll kind of go first on these ideas, and then you all can kind of jump in with what you think. But my kind of first thing I wanted to pose to all of us is, when did we first think about a business in the tiny space? I, for one, just kind of struggled with how to launch my business, where to focus my efforts, kept coming back to, I should just focus on the tiny house thing. I should just focus on the tiny house thing, and kept feeling like that was just too far out there, too nichey, too weird. But it just kept coming back to me and coming back to me and coming back to me. And I thought about so many other ideas, where can I focus my financial planning expertise? And ultimately, I just decided, hey, I'm going to take this risk and I'm going to focus on what resonates with me the deepest. And so that's how the Tiny House Advisor was born. What about for you, Mick? When did you kind of first think about this tiny space?
Yeah, sure. So I wanted to create like a consulting firm and do a YouTube channel for a while now, like at least like maybe like a little bit under a decade, but I could never figure out what to do either around. So the idea to do both didn't start for me until I was working for a tiny house company as a designer, and I started to see just how much information people don't know about tiny houses, but they're still willing to give people a lot of money. Which is kind of scary to me. So when I knew I was going to quit my designer role, that's when I came up with the idea for Make Things Tiny. I just came up with the name on a whim when I was talking to my wife, and I didn't think much of it. And I just wanted to create content around things that I really loved and I thought were useful. So like, what is a tiny house? What, like legally, what is it? What are some cool companies, So I just, checked out some different companies and was talking about them. And it's kind of just grown very quickly into something much bigger than what I had anticipated. And that's kind of where I decided to create the consulting firm, to see if there's a way to sort of bridge the gap between the businesses themselves and the consumers, to try to sort of be a resource for people on both sides of the fence, if you will.
Sounds like yours was really born out of what you saw a need. Mm-hmm. As far as what you saw that when you were in the design space. Eric, was yours out of a need too that you saw?
Yeah, I would say pretty similar in working in the camper van rental space. In particular, I was on the supply acquisition side. So my role was always talking with van owners, looking to bring vans into the rental market, and then trying to source them from all over the country, make sure kind of right vans, right price, and the right markets. And through that whole experience, again, there was this huge education gap of not only people looking to rent the vehicles or to get into them, but people that were thinking about doing kind of a try before you buy. They wanted to buy a vehicle. They didn't know what they wanted. They didn't know what features they needed. They didn't know how to do it. How can we finance this? Is there insurance? All of those things. I would have those conversations 20 to 30 times every single week, over and over and over again, the same conversation. So there was definitely just kind of a need for that. And then once I was outside of the rental market and outside of that company, I was still getting questions, in particular through LinkedIn. People would just ask random questions like, hey, I saw that you know a lot about camper vans or truck campers. What about this? What about this? What about this? So it was more of there just doesn't seem to be a great resource for people. And I wanted to be that resource.
So awesome. So, whenever you start a business, right, you're supposed to do a bunch of market research, right, and get yourself like a study group or a I forget what they call those groups where you ask them, questions about what would you like to see in this business, and, kind of looking at comparables. What have other businesses done? And I know for me, I'm in a completely niche space where there are no other financial advisors focused on the tiny living community. So there wasn't a lot of comparables to do. And I also feel like I'm not sure where this turns out for me in the long run. I mean, I know what the benchmarks are for starting your own firm. But since I'm, doing something that's never been done before, I have no idea kind of where that goes. So tell me about the research that you all did, if any, to kind of figure out, what are other similar businesses, or, what should my business, look like in 3 years or whatever. Nick, what did you kind of find, if anything, before you got started?
Yeah, sure. So I would say that even though I have the consulting sort of like arm of it that I do want to build up, my primary focus is on YouTube. I think that YouTube has the biggest opportunity for me to sort of like reach a large audience. I have goals for like, you can monetizing it, and, you can make a ton of money on YouTube. So that's kind of my primary thing. So I did a ton of research. Like, I'm kind of YouTube obsessed at this point. Like, I watch tons of videos in the tiny house space, in the real estate space, just in the doing tours, and just tried to see what types of personalities I liked and the way they were presenting information. And then I read like one of the premier YouTube algorithm books. It's like a 300-page book just on the algorithm itself and like how YouTube works, just to try to understand it. So I learned a lot by doing that. And I think the main thing that sort of I learned was just that when it comes to tiny houses, like, our industry uses social media to show the product, but not to talk about the product. So that's kind of where I created sort of like the focus for my channel, because my channel is not really about showing you what they look like. It's about talking to you about, how do you buy one? Who are the builders? What's it like to live in one? Where do you put it? How do you insure it? How do you pay for it? With the occasional tours, so it keeps it flashy or whatever. But for the most part, it's an information. I want to be kind of like the Google search equivalent of YouTube channel. So that's kind of what I learned in my research. But yeah, I did a ton. I read a lot.
Yeah, that's awesome. I feel so excited when I see your growth on YouTube, and knowing that it's like research based, like you can win
Yeah.
at YouTube.
Yeah, it's definitely possible.
What about you, Eric? Did you do a lot of research?
Research for mine, I guess the interesting one is that I was flooded with data. So again, being on the rental side of it and just seeing a lot of the back end information, like which vans are renting in which markets, how many people are in them, what amenities were they looking for, what were some of the hiccups, what were insurance claims, and where did the issues happen. I got to see all of that data on the back end, which, I would say 99.9% of people in the world just don't see that type of data. So I was able to see that and then correlate that a lot with just my, being out at shows, talking with literally thousands of people at this point about mobile vehicles of all variety. I put that all together and just said there's obviously still a niche here. So on my side, it's kind of, again, awesome that YouTube is working really well. The content side is next for me, of just creating as much information as possible, and not so much showing off vehicles or saying like, here's the fanciest thing. It's, here's why these things matter. We talked a little bit on the podcast about toilets. I will probably have an entire like potty episode, a whole blog article, and a whole thing on toilets and potties. And it sounds insane, but it's a very important thing. So a lot of that kind of research side came from data, and then just me knowing a lot and talking with a lot of people.
I feel like there's entire tiny house podcasts that exist right now where every other episode is about toilets, and it's so funny. It's one topic that I've been intentional on Less House More Moolah, like, not to talk about, because I know there's plenty of resources on composting toilets out there. So it sounds like that you all had a lot of justification and reason to believe that your business model was going to be successful. I, on the other hand, maybe as many folks in the finance space, decided just to take a lot of risk. I think, ultimately I probably took a lot of risk on this idea. We'll see how it, pans out in a few years. But at the same time, people are more and more often looking for advice in the financial space, especially younger generations. I'm also, focused a lot on aligning money with values and thinking about how we're investing and how that money is impacting the climate and other things. And I think that there's a lot of people that care about that too. So we'll see how it all works out. I'm not sure that my YouTube channel will ever get anywhere, but but nonetheless, some risk for sure. Mick, how much risk do you think you took?
I think I took a good amount because I knew that it was kind of like coming on the heels of leaving that one position, which is a sense of security. And then I just transitioned out of my formal career, which is in higher education. I've been a professor for a decade. So the timing of it, I knew was not going to be one where I felt super comfortable financially, but everything was just sort of saying that this was worth doing. And also it just sort of like speaks to me. Like I love YouTube. I think YouTube is a phenomenal platform. I think there's a lot of opportunity for the tiny house industry to just sort of continue to grow and find more creative ways to create community around social media and some of these different spaces. But yeah, definitely a risk for sure, because you don't know, especially with YouTube channels, like for as many YouTube channels as we see blow up and get millions of views and millions of subscribers, there are, hundreds of thousands more that don't blow up and don't get that many subscribers, that many views. So and then, if you put something out there, it's like your baby and it doesn't succeed, that kind of makes you feel discouraged. So yeah, definitely a ton of risk. But everyone that I talk to and just sort of like everything that I'm experiencing is telling me just keep doing it, even though you're not seeing the financial gains you want to see. I think in the long run, it's worth it to put this much effort in because it can only benefit you. Yeah.
Yeah, so good. What about you, Eric?
I'd say from my side, it's relatively low risk as far as kind of my first initial investment into just building a nice website and getting that kind of set up. I'd say right now it's pretty low risk with the opportunity to turn into higher risk. It's starting to get a lot more momentum and there's a lot more phone calls, a lot more emails and things. So I think from my side, I've been very focused on the work-life balance side, and I also run several other small companies. So just trying to think about how to manage those all. Ideally, I would like it to be a bigger risk at some point. I think that very similar to Mick. I think that's a very interesting way to go about it, and not a lot of people get to actually do something for a living that they're super passionate about, and that is also helping people. So that's kind of the goal. I think for me, I would say I would like to be riskier in the future, but mitigated risk, of course. I've got little ones and family and a big move and things coming up.
Yeah, for sure. I'm glad that you bring up that it's passion based and rewarding. I'm interested to hear from you both kind of what your most rewarding part has been so far. I know for me, my podcast is super rewarding. I'm quite the introvert, even though maybe it doesn't seem that way. And I love the conversations that I get to have one-on-one with people doing really inspiring things. It is just so fulfilling to have those conversations and get those conversations out in the world and maybe help someone else think about a concept that they've never thought of before. Probably the most rewarding part is, delivering a unique message. What about for you, Mick?
I would say probably all of it. I think it's like a rare thing where like the other day my wife asked me if I like what parts of YouTube I like, and I'm like I love every aspect of it. There's not one part that I find boring. I would say the most rewarding thing is just getting to meet people because I've interviewed so many different types of people on the channel, and then just seeing all the interactions in the comments, seeing people respond and say like I didn't know this, or this is super helpful, or for a lot of the tiny house community videos I do, people will reach out and like they'll be like, oh, this is great. I've been looking for a place to put my tiny house. I'm totally going to reach out to this person. Maybe I'll move into this community. I think just seeing that, creating all these different resources is paying off in that sense and bringing people together. It's really great to see that, that's kind of validating like that, like, yes, there actually was a need and that's being met through what I'm doing. And I don't feel like there's any better reward than seeing that like you're actually meeting a need. So I would say probably that if I had to pick one.
What about you, Eric?
I think for me, it always comes back. I call it kind of the light bulb moment. I had a light bulb moment in a 76 Westie while traveling through the West with my family. And I know a lot of my renters, when they come back from one of our vehicles, or a lot of people when they take their first trips, in a camper van or kind of a mobile dwelling, they have that light bulb moment. They come back and they're like, whoa, that was way different than what I expected. We did this and this, and they were able to travel easier, and everything seemed easier for them, and families as well. When they come back and they're like, this, there's hiccups and there's things that we would change, but overall, like, this was super fun. Like, it really worked for us, and that's kind of the part that I like the most, is just this like inspiration or light bulb, and you can see the wheels start turning. And I cannot tell you how many times somebody will come back off a rental or go through that experience, or like, so how do you get one of these now? Like, what's the process? How do we go through it? We're sold. That was awesome. We slowed down. We got to reconnect. We got to enjoy kind of road tripping again, which I think is not left society, but I think it dwindled for a while. So yeah, for me, it's definitely just those moments of, yes, this is really incredible. They don't know what they're going to do with it yet, but that you can see the spark in their eye.
So cool. We're all like changing people's lives a little bit, even if we're just sort of rearranging the Legos in their brain of how things work. And I think that, it's such an honor, responsibility too, and yet has, keeps you going on a regular basis. And sometimes in other, maybe career choices, you don't have anything that's keeping you going all the time. And a lot of that is about what you're trying to achieve. And so I wanted to kind of talk about what you're trying to achieve that wasn't possible in your prior role or prior career or what have you. I know for me, I felt in my prior corporate role that my unique perspective and my unique voice wasn't allowed. I don't, want to follow a traditional financial advisor path of working only with high net worth individuals and hanging out at golf courses and making sure that everybody has enough money to buy their multiples of homes all over the country. I want to help, people that are trying to craft something unique for themselves and that really understand that time to choose is probably more valuable than having a really large portfolio. And I wanted to do it from my tiny house and have my own financial independence therefore. And so none of those things worked where I was before. And so what I'm trying to achieve is part for myself, but part helping other people who maybe wouldn't otherwise have someone to, show them the things that I know about, making a financial plan around that. So that's kind of what I'm trying to achieve that I wasn't able to before. What about you, Mick?
Yeah, I think like I'm really grateful for my education. Like I feel like I wouldn't be able to do the things I'm doing now if I hadn't, gotten so many degrees. But with that being said, I think the landscape of higher ed has changed drastically in the past decade since I started in my PhD program. And I think I've just found that being in like a creative space is really hard. It's really hard to find the space to be truly creative, and also speak your mind the way that you want to as a professor, because you do have to think about the fact that you're representing a university. And I think with the cost of tuition going up and things like that, I feel like the students were they're rightfully so, but like very jaded and kind of struggling to see the value of an education, which I understand because my degree didn't cost none of my degrees cost as much as like one of their degrees combined. So I think, just, being aware of the housing crisis and things like that, like I just wanted to make sure that whatever I did next, I was truly passionate about. Because I think that more than anything, I think the pandemic and stuff has just taught me that you don't want to waste time. And so I just kind of wanted to get to sort of like the foundation of what I'm really passionate about. And it's tiny houses and people and bringing people together and community building. And that's just not something I was going to be able to do. And I think if I had done a YouTube channel before as a professor, it would have been like very different because I would have had to be like super kind of like proper about it in terms of how I went about it. So I think just creative freedom is probably the biggest reason for me.
Yeah. What about for you, Eric?
I think for me, it was in the previous side in this one, it was very on the rental industry. So I was very, very lucky to work for an incredible company, incredible people. And I learned a lot in that specific industry. But it still runs like a company. So there's marketing teams, there's marketing meetings, there's social plans, there's content plans. Now all of those things are just me. So I can wake up any day that I want, and then I just get to choose what the content plan is, what the ideas are, what types of things I'm trying to connect, which people I'm trying to connect with. Um, so it's more of that kind of freedom to just take it in whatever direction I want. And because it's still very new, I don't have to be set in stone on anything. So if I see a need pop up, I can kind of adjust that. If somebody, I started building courses and different things for this, and after some feedback, people were like, I would probably just talk to you instead of do a course. So just do that more. So I think for me, it's a lot of that creative freedom to just go where I want with it. And at the same time, it's all coming back to the same place, which is just giving more options, different options, not only for travel, different options for kind of vacation holidays, but different opportunities for people to not do standard housing, to do, go buy the home. Or we talked a lot about veterans, or, people that are transitioning out of the military. Everybody kind of does the same thing. You go back home, you get the job, you do those. And I'm really starting to put a framework around how do we do this differently? Is there a way to get veterans access to these vehicles and let them travel for a while, let them kind of decompress? So I have the freedom to do that now. That's a plan that I get to put fully out there. I get to plan it all. I get to launch it. All of that is me. So I think for me, it's a lot more of just that creative freedom, and then just I get to wake up and decide what that's going to be.
Yeah, so from all three of us, I hear creativity, freedom to be creative, freedom to be authentic, freedom to be flexible and, build something and have control over it. And I think that for anybody who's thinking about, starting their own thing, who wants to be out on the road or living tiny, they're probably thinking about those same things. How do I get more freedom and authenticity in my career? And how do I get to have a little bit more control than I did in the corporate world? So in doing so, there's lots of different ways to make money, right? We are all making money in very different ways. So let's talk about revenue model a little bit, just as a way to, present a couple of examples. Currently, my revenue model has been focused on something that I just sort of kind of copied and adapted from my previous role. That's, kind of what I knew. I knew that I wanted to have very transparent fees in comparison to the sort of traditional financial advisor. So I do a fee for service, and it's a flat fee. But it is still, my original product was still more geared for people that are maybe downsizing, that have some net worth. And now I've launched recently, I'm providing a financial freedom calculator with a one-time consult, reducing the price point, trying to help people, get started with money who have never really, thought about what their income expenses, how much savings would I need to hit the road, all of those things. And then I'm also working on a book project, which, probably won't ever make me a lot of money, but would allow for me to do more speaking or other things. And so that's kind of my three-pronged approach to the revenue. Share yours, Mick. What are you working on from a revenue model perspective?
Yeah, sure. So on the YouTube side of things, there's a couple things. So once it's monetized, then it's making money through ads. You can also make money through sponsorships. So I've got a couple sponsors for the channel. The other side of the other piece of it is partnerships. So partnerships with companies to either sell their tiny houses, promote them. That's another way to make money. And then there's the consulting side too, where it's either consulting with businesses to do like social media or, design, that sort of thing, or with individuals as well too. So I would say it's consulting, YouTube with ads, and then a sponsorship or like brand partnerships with builders to sell tiny houses. So yeah, a couple of them.
So a lot of B2B, where mine's all business to consumer,
Mm-hmm.
right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And Eric, what about you?
Mine is probably on a very unique side, and this is the first time that I've done one, but it's a pay what you want model. So right before starting Family Trucksters, I also ran into this model randomly, this pay what you want model, and how companies are utilizing it. And I sort of instantly fell in love with it. And it was at the same exact time. So I just kind of merged them together. So any of the kind of 1v1 or consulting or people that are looking for educational resources, that's all a pay what you want model. So after talking with them, I give them kind of general guidelines. If you want to think of it as like a hefty tip or something very nice if they go through the process. That's how it's set up right now. And then I'll have some other products and services that'll still be in the pay what you want model, and it'll be tiered. So there'll be different tiers. I just think, if somebody has more disposable income and they can pay kind of the full amount for it, that would be incredible. It definitely helps me out. If somebody is, cash strapped, but they really need this information and they really need some help in there, I want to just give them another avenue. And then on the same side, on the back side, I have quite a few brand partnerships set up right now with different builders and different companies that have products. So I kind of talk with everybody that I always recommend the builders that I work with. Again, I have a partnership with them, but if it's not the right type of vehicle for that person or that family, I will let them know. I'll say this probably isn't the perfect fit. If it is a perfect fit, I try to recommend those brands first. And then if they go through and they purchase one of the vehicles or they purchase a rental or a trip, things like that, then I will get paid by the company. So it's kind of a little bit of B2C, and then it merges into B2B. But all the brands I work with are ones that I've known for a while. I've been in and out of their vehicles. I have a pretty large knowledge base of them, and I feel really comfortable saying, this is a good investment avenue.
Yeah, that's so cool. You've got your eggs not in one basket.
Yep.
So we've talked a lot about YouTube, on here. Obviously, we're recording this as a YouTube exclusive. Sparkles. And so I just wondered, aside from YouTube, or maybe it's only YouTube, what's your favorite media platform and why? And this is really kind of timely for me. I've been listening to the podcast by my podcast host, my hosting platform, which is Buzzsprout. I've been listening to their podcast and learning a lot about the podcasting industry through their podcast, and the way that podcasting is slow media, like books are slow media. And so you have a particular type of person who wants to listen to a full-length podcast, and a particular person who wants to read a full-length book. So I'm one of those people. And so I guess, we all kind of want to work with people that are similar to us or share certain values. So I've been learning a lot about podcasting and slow media, and kind of wanting to work with people that also appreciate slow media and kind of the rich contextual nature that you get from a slower media, as opposed to a more flashy, designed to be sensational. So I am hoping that eventually the podcast is doing so well that maybe I can scale back some of my more fast media efforts, because they're not my favorite. It's not where I spend my time. I prefer to listen to, podcasts and full length things. So that would be my favorite platform is, podcast and books and kind of the slower way about content. Mick, we know you love YouTube. Is there anything more about YouTube you want to say, or other platforms that you really appreciate?
I would say it's definitely YouTube for me, hands down. I would, and I think the reason why on the creator end, I love it as a consumer. I watch a ton of YouTube myself, but on the creator side of it and on the entrepreneurial side of it, I love it because it gives you so much data. So like I just get to pour over tons and tons of data over, every day I check, the data on there, and to see like how things grow, and you can make tweaks. So I think the fact that you can always change something, like I can go back and change the title or the thumbnail for my video from 2 months ago, and I think the fact that things can continue to grow over time, like you can post a video a month ago and maybe 3 years from now is when it really takes off and you get tons of views. I think that is the piece of it that keeps me there. And I think the fact that you can do short form content on there with the shorts, you can keep it under a minute, or you can do long form stuff. I think that it's just very versatile. And I love that it gives the creators so much information, a lot more information than you get from like Instagram or like Facebook necessarily, Twitter, those sorts of things. A little bit different, sort of like beasts to handle in their own right. But yeah, I would say the data piece alone is what sort of keeps me a YouTube fan.
So what about you, Eric?
Mine's probably pretty unique. I feel like the business is in a very kind of old school way where it's very referral heavy, and LinkedIn is probably 98% of those right now, I would say. It's just, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn just in general. And then through that, people refer to me as like the camper van guy, or like, hey, this guy posts stuff about camper vans once in a while, hit him up. And I think a lot of the people I talk to are working professionals. They're doing really well in their careers. they've been saving, they have disposable income, but they're also not super happy or they're, I think they kind of feel stuck. They want to do something different. They want to adventure more. They want to think about downsizing. In it's my generation, I'm 38, and this retirement idea keeps coming up about how do millennials actually retire? And you kind of take a look at everything, and cost of living's going up and homes are so much. So I think a lot of people in my age bracket as well are starting to think about, okay, how do we do this differently? Can we downsize? Can we move mobile? Can we take a work sabbatical, but also save money doing other things in that time? So a lot of that is just from LinkedIn and posting on there, and a lot of it is just referral basis. So luckily, it's been very easy so far as that one. As I look to grow, I am going to have to do a lot of different other media, so YouTube and podcasts. I have a whole new blog side to the website coming soon. So all of that is coming, but right now I've just been lucky of just people say I'm a camper van guy or the guy that does camper van stuff, and that seems to work right now.
Yeah, well, that's where I found you, was on LinkedIn.
Yeah, yeah, that's kind of generally how it's gone so far. It's less about the brand and more probably just my face, personal brand, I guess.
Yes, awesome. Yeah, it's your banner image.
Yeah, that always helps too.
So as we're coming to the end of our conversation about, sort of entrepreneurship and tiny living, I think it's good for us to kind of talk about where we want to be in 5 years, personally and professionally, for those folks who might be aspirational and thinking about starting a business in tiny living. Understanding kind of what is the end game is really important when you make decisions, because it's not about kind of what is sustainable for 6 months, but what can you wake up and continue to do every day? What can you stick with? I, for one, can get really jazzed up about sparkly things. And so knowing yourself and knowing, what's going to keep you going for a long time is really important when you start out, because starting a business can be really exciting at the beginning, and then continuing to show up for it every day is just like showing up for any other job. You have to stay consistent. So I personally see in 5 years we'll be in 2029. I think I had some sort of idea that maybe I was going to quote unquote retire in 2032. I think the idea there was that I just wanted more time autonomy. I wanted, more time to hike with my dogs. And really, I have found that I get bored quite easily, and that I need to constantly be striving for goals, very goal oriented. So in 5 years, I would like to think that I would be able to move more towards content, and maybe focus more on a couple of other book ideas that I have in my mind, and, kind of focus more on creativity, and less on maybe some of the business minutia that I'm bogged down in right now, like trying to grow a following and making sure that I'm doing regulatory compliant activities and all of that. But, being able to maybe delegate more and focus more on creation. And, by 2029. What about you, Mick?
Oh man, I think about this a lot because I'm very future minded, like very future oriented. So like I like literally draw things out and map stuff out like this all the time. So I would say 2029, which sounds weird to say, sounds like a funky number, but in 2029, I would definitely want to have the current YouTube channel that I have just be like, really big, like 100,000 followers will be awesome, or 100,000 subscribers will be great. I have like other things that I'm doing that are unrelated to tiny houses, so I probably have like 3 YouTube channels by then. I think that would be really, really ideal. Probably a couple consulting businesses in different spaces, and definitely have my own tiny house that I'd be running as like a short-term rental, like Airbnb. And then, hopefully starting my own tiny house company too. I'll be back in the Pacific Northwest in 2029. I'll be up in Oregon, in Portland. So I would love to have a tiny house on the beach on the Oregon coast that I could spend the summers at too. So yeah, I've I think about this a lot, but yeah, I think those would probably be the main things. And hopefully just have more passive income so that, I think as Eric has talked about, just sort of like having more control over when you work and how you work. And maybe having a few employees, because I want to be able to provide like fair wages and mentorship opportunities and really create a healthy, stable work environment that's just kind of rare in our culture in the US too. So I would love to help people grow and get experience in a lot of different industries too.
Yeah. Love that. What about you, Eric?
Well, physically, I will be in Australia.
Cool.
So by then, we will not be citizens there, but I don't know what status we'll be in. But my family, we're in the immigration process right now for Australia. So got a 1-year-old and then a 5-year-old. My wife just passed her physical therapy exam, which is kind of our last kind of checkbox that we needed to do. So we are officially headed that way. We don't know the exact timeline. So physically, we will be there. And then once we're there, I think the goal for family trucksters in general is to not have it be a solo project. I like it as a solo project now as I kind of put it together, but I'm thinking a lot about how to find other people similar to me in different countries and different areas so that we can kind of have, that resource and be that resource. Travel in the United States is different than travel in Australia. Living in the United States is different than living in Australia. So different rules, different regulations, all types of things like that. So I think that'll be part of it is, I kind of have to build a new network over in Australia with builders and with other companies as well. And then hopefully maybe there's somebody here in the States that I can kind of transfer that over to. So I think main goal for us is just moving and making sure the family is happy and healthy over there and everybody's feeling good about this kind of, big life change. And on the company side, it's about kind of trying to find the right people that I want to work with in this specific way. That way, like Mick said, that way the company's creating income for other people as well that are also interested in this. I have no grandiose ideas that I can do everything all on my own and still be a good human being and husband and father and all those things. So yeah, I think for us, growth is very much additional people in my world.
That's interesting. I think all three of us are trying to find our team of people that we can work with who are, passionate about this, the ideas that we're passionate about. And certainly working with others can be so fulfilling because you get to see other people grow and, you see their success too. And I know that's been something that I've, wanted to continue on after having left a major corporate environment where I had, a team, and now being out on my own, I'm just anxious to always be adding more people so that we can be successful together. And it's not, just me and the ups and downs of feeling good one day and not so good the next. Well, this has been such a valuable conversation. Thank you both so much for being here today. As we head out, let's just make sure that we all three share where we can be reached if anybody is trying to track us down. And also maybe just a little word of inspiration for anybody out there who's thinking about maybe tiny living being part of their self-employment or entrepreneurship journey. I know that I am always sort of preaching the gospel when it comes to, having control and, time to choose. And I think we've all touched on the fact that, every day we get to wake up and work on something that we're passionate about, but we also get to choose our focus area. Like if I feel like I'm very creative today, it's a great day to write. And if I feel like I'm really, focused today, maybe it's a great day to do my administrivia tasks or whatever. And we get to choose our tasks. But that requires us to be disciplined and, have our time blocks maybe on our calendar or have our to-do lists and make sure that we're holding ourselves accountable to the success that we're trying to create. So I think if you have that right mixture of like being really passionate and motivated, but also having some self-discipline, I think that's a good recipe for success. I'm at thetinyhouseadvisor.com, obviously. Mick?
Yeah. So I would say that if I could give a piece of advice, it would be that just to do it. I think that's something I've learned in doing this and taking the risk is that anything is possible, but you have to start somewhere. And there's so many needs within the industry that like there's so many ideas that you could have that could be really successful, both financially and just for you as a person. And then the other thing I would say is just reach out to people. Like and just ask questions. It's something that I've learned a lot about by just doing that. Like if you see someone on YouTube or you see someone on Instagram that seems like they might be able to like give you advice, like just send them a message. send them an email. The worst thing that can happen is they don't answer, but you never know what's possible if you don't take the time to just reach out and get to know people and expand your network in the early stages. And then, yeah, I'm available at on YouTube at Make Things Tiny, makethingstiny.com, and then also makethingstiny@gmail.com too.
Super. What about you, Eric?
Yeah, I'd say, I guess my best advice for this in general is if you're not in a remote work situation, start to look into that avenue, because being able to work remotely or being able to work from anywhere, it opens a lot more opportunities to do this as well. So that's another kind of key element to it for those that are looking to go tiny, looking to, have more mobile travel, is that if you can bring work along on those travels, it'll be a lot easier. And I think people are surprised by how many industries that are, very much in office or kind of in a building type of jobs can be done remotely, or they have transferable skills into other industries. So that's something that I think a lot of people are shocked, like, oh, I had no idea that, I had a friend that was a nurse that she'd been a nurse for like a decade now, just transferred to remote work. And I was like, how did you transfer to remote work? Now it's more on the admin side, and it's working with the back end systems that she's been using. So, a career transfer, but now gives her a lot more flexibility to a lot of different things. So for me, I would say don't let that hinder you of that you're currently in this type of role, in this type of job, and there's no way you can do it. There's, kind of like Mick said, there's a lot of ways to do it. You kind of just have to, go. You not even dip your toe in. You just got to jump in the pool, and you will swim. You will figure it out. There are a lot of resources coming out. Other than that, thefamilytruckster.co is the main way that you can reach me. We also have an Instagram that's coming along. I'm going to add some more things to it, and then I'm active on LinkedIn, quite active on LinkedIn. So it's Eric, ERIC, Raszewski, RASZEWSKI. So feel free to hit me up. I'd love to chat with you.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for coming back for this YouTube exclusive conversation about entrepreneurship and tiny living. I think this was a super valuable conversation with 3 different perspectives. So awesome. And I hope this was super valuable. If you had something interesting come out of this, we'd love to see a comment. I know Mick would love to see a comment. So definitely share with us your takeaways in the comments. Until next time.
Hey, I'm honored that you listened to this episode of Less House, More Moolah. I hope something in it will help you continue to move toward a life aligned with your values. Every algorithm out there is trying to tell us what to prioritize, but we get to choose. If you haven't ever identified your key values, I have a free resource on my website to help you. Just have to go to thetinyhouseadvisor.com. It's thetinyhouseadvisor.com. At the bottom of the page, you can grab the Tiny Life Values Worksheet. When we design a life around what is our core truth, we shortcut to deep fulfillment. See you next Thursday.
Please see the show notes for important disclosure regarding the Tiny House Advisor LLC and this episode.